Today attending this press conference is District Attorney Jason Anderson of San Bernardino County. We have Chief of Police Richard Tolbar from Redlands Police Department, members of our District Attorney Major Crimes Unit, and members of Redlands Police Department Detective Bureau. We will take questions after this press conference, and at this time, I'd like to introduce District Attorney Jason Anderson.
Thanks, Jackie. I appreciate that. Thanks, everyone, for being here. We wanted to announce that this morning we did file murder charges against suspect Michael Sparks, 62 years old, of Redlands. The two victims are the Menards, Stephanie and Daniel. In addition to filing the two separate murder charges, we filed an allegation of special circumstances alleging multiple murders, in addition to factors in aggravation. My understanding is that due to some court process, he will be arraigned in person tomorrow. I want to say that from the beginning of this case, what we were impressed by were the community members, friends, and loved ones who were so concerned about the Menards that came forward to indicate that things weren't right. From there, obviously, Redlands Police Department took over, did a phenomenal investigation in terms of determining the status of the Menards, and then focusing in on a suspect and doing an investigation that was rather significant, starting last Thursday all the way through the weekend, that led up to where we're at today. I know our Victim Services Bureau has already begun to reach out to the next of kin to the Menards to let them aware of the process. In terms of what's going forward, it's obviously going to be very difficult not only on the family members but on the community where the Menards live. We know that obviously is a factor for those individuals. I do want to thank Chief Tolbar from Redlands Police Department and their entire investigative team for the work that they did. A very unusual case. They worked very quickly under conditions that were, in my opinion, unprecedented, to be able to bring some humanity to the Menards, and obviously at this stage in filing charges, pursuit of justice on our behalf. I also want to thank one of my colleagues, Supervising Deputy District Attorney Lisa Crane, who is present just over to my right, who was out there throughout the weekend, being able to assist in terms of what this case was going to turn into, and understanding where this case was going to go, ultimately giving us an opportunity when it came in after a holiday weekend to be able to make what, in our opinion, is the right factual and legal decisions in terms of the filing and going forward from there. So, Lisa, thank you very much. And as it relates to the rest of the investigation, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Tolbar to fill you in, and then if there's any questions in regards to the process of filing, I'm happy to answer those when the press conference is over. So, Chief, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Tolbar. I'm the Chief of Police at Redlands, California. And I'd like to start by extending our condolences to the family and friends of the victims. We're mourning with the community over the homicides of Dan and Stephanie Menard. As you all know from the information that's already been provided, this case began a little more than a week ago when Dan and Stephanie Menard were reported missing on August 25th from their residence at Olive Dell Ranch in Ritchie Canyon. Redlands Police immediately followed up on the missing persons report with an extensive search of the hills and canyon area around the ranch. During the follow-up investigation, RPD teams returned to Olive Dell Ranch on Thursday, August the 29th to conduct additional investigation and to talk to the Menards neighbors once again. It was while our teams were on site that the police dispatchers received information from an individual identified as a family member, indicating that the suspect, Michael Sparks, was involved in the disappearance and had admitted to killing two people and was threatening suicide. Redlands Police immediately locked down the property and began the search for Sparks, narrowing the search down to his home, which happens to be next door to the Menards. Because we had information leading us to believe that Sparks was potentially armed and barricaded, we called in additional assets to ensure the safety of our officers as well as the public. Following long hours and multiple efforts to contact Sparks with no response, we obtained a search warrant and used a drone to first enter the property. That search was unsuccessful, and believing that Sparks and possibly the Menards were still on the property, we used a TAC-CAT to breach the property and continued to search using remote cameras for safety reasons. Eventually, search teams located Sparks in the subterranean basement. He was in fact armed with a rifle, which he attempted to fire in an effort to harm himself. and the weapon misfired, and Sparks was subsequently taken into custody. Over the next 4 days, law enforcement teams have searched the suspect's property, ultimately locating the remains of 2 people who we believe to be Dan and Stephanie Menard, along with other evidence. The search of the property was completed yesterday. I'd like to acknowledge the work of the men and the women of Redlands Police Department who did an incredible job from the initial search for Dan and Stephanie Menard to the successful completion of the investigation. I'd also like to thank our partners from other agencies who worked alongside Redlands PD, including CAL FIRE, the American Medical Response, and I'd like to thank the Redlands Fire Department who provided personnel trained in confined space operations that made it possible to enter the subterranean space and recover victims along with other evidence. I also want to thank various city crews who assisted, from the wastewater crew who used their specialized equipment to provide us with a look into the crime scene, and the city building engineer who evaluated the structure to ensure that it was safe to enter. I also want to thank our law enforcement partners from both the Riverside County Sheriff's Department and the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, the California Highway Patrol, the San Bernardino County Coroner's Office, and of course, the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office. And I would also like to thank those members of the media who've assisted us in keeping the public informed throughout this investigation as it progressed. Thank you for your time.
At this time, if anybody has any additional questions, they will be vetted to the appropriate personnel. Go ahead, Rob.
I have a question perhaps for the police chief. Do you know if the coroner has positively identified the remains yet? And is there any possibility that the human remains are of, in addition to Dan and Stephanie, potentially other people?
I do not know at this time if the coroner has positively identified the remains. I would have to defer that question to them. And at this time, I don't have any reason to believe that there are other remains, but again, I would have to defer that question to them.
On that, is there any reason to believe there could be other victims?
I have no reason to believe that at this time.
Were the bodies fully intact, or could you talk about the condition of the bodies?
As this is an ongoing investigation, I'm not going to speak to the condition of the bodies at this time.
Were there any weapons that were found in that basement?
Again, based on the fact that this is an ongoing investigation, I'm not going to comment on that at this time.
Do we have any idea, has he said anything, or do you guys have any idea of what exactly happened? Like, were they killed immediately on Saturday, or do we know how long they've been down there? I'm just looking for...
So again, as I've said previously, this is an ongoing investigation, so I can't comment on that at this point in time.
Yeah, but you said it for other questions, so...
Sorry, certainly, and I'm happy to answer in that manner, but it is still ongoing, an ongoing investigation, so I'm not going to comment on that at this point in time.
Okay, well, maybe this is a better question for the DA then. Why would you guys give this special circumstance then if we don't have any information on exactly what happened?
Well, we know they're dead, and we know there's 2 victims. And so the special allegation that we filed is multiple victims in a murder case. Every murder case is serious, but we've always felt that under certain circumstances, and certainly in this instance, where the indication is you find 2 people under the home of the suspect, that is appropriate for multiple victims in terms of special circumstance. I mean, we have a saying, and I don't say it lightly, but I want to say it clearly, is that you don't get a free murder. And in this case, that we believe that we can go forward and prove that Mr. Sparks is responsible for both. So that's why the special allegation there. It's sort of aside from the questions you were asking earlier in terms of why and how. We do know we have 2 dead folks, so that's why the allegation is there.
Can you, as much as you can, describe that subterranean area, and if you can reveal, where the bodies were? And was that area newly built?
I don't believe it was newly built. It's essentially what you have is sort of a homemade basement type area underneath the structure. So in some regards, perhaps unusual, but in other regards, that wouldn't necessarily be unusual. It's the person's parcel, and they can do what they want with it. But that was what was underneath, and I believe that was the concern about anything structurally that might have happened. Who knows how well it was built, but that was the condition that law enforcement met when they started to find the bodies.
Has Michael Sparks been cooperative in the investigation?
I'm not going to comment on anything that he may or may not have done. They made an arrest on Thursday, and we're proceeding with the charges.
When you first spoke, as you opened this news conference, you described this as a very unusual case. What makes you say that?
Because you have a community that, for all intents and purposes that we've seen throughout the week, is a very tight-knit community. Obviously, people were very concerned about the Menards. There's been vigils that have been held there. But when you look at the circumstances of an elderly couple who it clearly was a sign of trouble that they were not where they were expected to be by their loved ones on the Sunday, and then you find their remains underneath a house in the same community, double murder of elderly people by a 62-year-old defendant, that's pretty unique.
How long do you think they had been there for?
I do not know. I think obviously when the coroner and the pathology is done, there'll be a better idea of what we're talking about in terms of time frame. But again, for our purposes, in terms of understanding that they've both been killed, that's what is most relevant to us in terms of the charges.
Could you say that this was premeditated?
Would not be able to say that at all, no.
We haven't seen the complaint, but I'm sort of wondering if some of the names that it said that there was tension between them and some argument over something, that tree. Do you have any further information on that?
I do not have any further information on that. I don't know if that's something the
Is there
chief
anything in
wishes
the
to speak to.
complaint about that?
Nothing in the complaint. Our complaint contains the two substantive charges, count 1, count 2, the special allegation in terms of multiple murder, and then as required by law in California, we also add factors in aggravation that we think are present that we would have to prove at a later stage. We don't get into the whole, your question is a good one, but we're not required to do that in terms of the process, and that's probably not even something I think that we would comment on at this point.
Chief, do you have anything to add to that?
To the same point, we're still investigating that to be able to answer that question for you. So at this point, we're not going to be able to comment further on
So
that.
at this point, you don't know anything about the relationship, and also you don't know what the motive was.
Correct. So I know that they were neighbors, but I can't speak to the motive at this point.
Well, Chief, this is your community. I mean, you guys worked so hard on this. I was out there, I know that from Sunday to Thursday. Is there anything that you wish to say to the people of Redlands about how seriously you took this, or any thoughts on these sort of heinous allegations?
Oh, absolutely. Like I started with condolences to the family, but also a big thanks to echo Mr. Anderson's comments on our community that stepped up, that reached out, that communicated with us throughout the investigation. We took it very seriously, as you know, from being out there and knowing that we were out there continually from Thursday on. Like I said, I'm very thankful for all of the partners, including our community, that came together to be able to see the investigation through to fruition.
Have you seen anything like this before, or do you have any thoughts on this?
Certainly, it is I'm not sure that I've ever seen this type of case. It is certainly concerning, and I'm thankful for my partners here who spent the weekend with us sorting through the case and through the investigation, that they'll be able to bring some justice for the Menards.
Just to clarify, so he had texted his own family members, correct?
That's correct.
That he was going to commit suicide or possibly commit suicide?
Somebody who identified themselves as a family member, yes, he had reached out to them.
And it was
With
just
that
one person?
information. I believe that there may have been other people that were texted, but the initial call that started our focus on him was from a family.
Is there any
One of
reason why
his
his
family
vehicle was
Yes.
found? Why the vehicle was found? Like, have the Menards been driving it at all? I mean, that's just a weird piece of the puzzle where it's just found abandoned a half mile down the road. Do we know why the keys were still in the ignition? Were they trying to get away, maybe?
I don't have the answer to that right now.
Is there evidence of foul play in the car?
The missing dog.
Is there evidence of the car where?
Sorry, there's two questions that were asked.
Sir, go ahead.
You asked about the update on the dog. At this time, we have no further information on the whereabouts of the dog, no.
Is there evidence of the car, where the car was found, the foul play, blood, or anything like that, indicating they've been killed there?
No, there's not.
No?
No.
All right, that's going to be the conclusion of our press conference today, you guys. Thank you so much for attending. I am going to be releasing the complaint shortly thereafter, as well as the court case number and follow-up on arraignment dates. So thank you so much for your time today.
Is there a Spanish speaker for Telemundo?
I can arrange that for you if you just want to hang out for a minute. Thank you.
That's our understanding, Rob. Yeah, tomorrow morning, in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, you guys, I have the court case number here if anybody wants to just write it down really quick.
Sure.
Actually, it's on your media
Oh, it's on the
advisory.
piece of paper.
Yeah.